The screen was still glowing with my data when all 9 of them stood up at the exact same time. Not one at a time. All of them, like someone had sent a signal I didn't hear. Chairs pushed back simultaneously, tablets grabbed, not a single one of them looking in my direction. I was mid-sentence about pressure variance tolerances on the Series 7 valve line, and just like that, the room decided it was done with me. Darren Foss spoke first. He's the COO, son of the founder. Never worked a day on a factory floor in his life, but carries himself like he personally welded every machine in this building. "This is a waste of everyone's time," he said. Didn't look at me when he said it. Craig Sutton, VP of Operations and former attorney, gave me one of those thin smiles lawyers practice in mirrors. "Walt, maybe the problem isn't the equipment. Maybe it's your calibration standards." Then they walked out, all 9 of them. The door clicked shut and I was alone with a room full of evidence they didn't want to exist. I sat there for about 30 seconds. The slides were still up on the screen. Pressure readings, test logs, incident reports from 2 separate refineries that Caldwell Pressure Systems had quietly settled without ever fixing the root cause. I looked at the data, then looked at the empty chairs, then pulled out my phone and called Sandra Reeves. "My name is Walt Greer. I'm 54. I've spent 22 years in mechanical engineering and quality assurance, mostly in oil and gas. I know pressure systems the way some guys know baseball stats, not because it's a hobby, but because getting it wrong kills people. I learned that in Beaumont 15 years ago, I was on site when a pressure relief valve failed during a routine maintenance check. My colleague Ray didn't make it out. The investigation found the valve had been certified to specs it never actually met. The manufacturer settled. Nobody went to jail. Ray's wife got a check and a lot of silence. I switched to QA that same year, not for the money, because I decided I'd rather be the guy who catches the problem than the one writing the condolence letter. That's why Caldwell recruited me. "We need your expertise," Foss had said in my final interview. Warm handshake, warm smile, minor process inefficiencies. Fresh eyes are all we need. The first sign something was wrong came during my facility walkthrough first week on the job. Pete Halsey, a QA technician who'd been at Caldwell 11 years, showed me around with the energy of someone defusing a bomb. Precise, careful, too careful. When I asked about validation protocols for the Series 7 line, his eyes moved to a camera in the corner before he answered. He said all the right words in exactly the wrong order. The second sign came when I pulled test logs and cross-referenced them against shipping records. Valves that had failed internal pressure checks were leaving the facility with approval signatures. I brought it to Foss directly. He told me to follow established protocols. The next morning, a $14,000 bonus appeared in my account with no explanation. I sent it back the same day. 2 days later, Foss called me into his office and told me the bonus had been a payroll error that had since been corrected. His voice was completely level. His eyes were not. From that point on, every request I made for additional test documentation was routed through a new approval process that added 10 business days to each response. The message was clear without anyone having to say it out loud. I kept going anyway. The third sign was Pete himself, showing up at my car on a Tuesday morning in the parking garage, checking over his shoulder like a man who'd been awake all night thinking about whether to do this. "They're already calling your report an exaggeration," he said quietly. Foss briefed the senior team last week. "They're framing it as a new hire who doesn't understand how the industry actually works. He already has your termination paperwork drafted." I asked him why he was telling me this. He looked at the ground. "I've got 3 kids. I'm not proud of what I know." He walked away before I could respond. That same afternoon, I received an encrypted email from an address I didn't recognize. No introduction. Just a file directory and one line. Walter Briggs didn't leave because of health reasons. Walter Briggs was my predecessor. The official story was early retirement, stress-related. His former team had been vague about it in the way people get vague when they've been told to be vague. I'd asked about his documentation during my first week and was told his filing system was non-standard and hadn't transferred cleanly. I opened the directory that night. What I found was 14 months of work, the same patterns I'd been tracking, but more complete, more documented. Walter had done everything right. He'd identified the falsified test results, traced the offshore payments following regulatory inspections, and built a case that should have ended careers. Then Caldwell's legal team had put a choice in front of him: sign an NDA with a settlement attached or face a manufactured fraud investigation using his own internal communications taken out of context. He signed. But before he left, he'd encrypted everything and set a 45-day timer. If he didn't manually reset it, the files would automatically route to a list he'd prepared. For 14 months, he'd been resetting that timer alone, waiting. Then, 2 weeks before my presentation, he let it run. The directory hit my inbox on a Wednesday evening. By Thursday morning, I had forwarded everything to Sandra Reeves. Sandra Reeves had been a senior investigator at the EPA OSHA Joint Task Force for 11 years. She'd been circling Caldwell for over a year before I arrived, which I didn't know when I first reached out to her. What she had was circumstantial evidence, financial patterns that looked wrong, inspection timelines that didn't add up, 2 refinery incident reports where the liability chain went cold in ways that suggested deliberate obstruction. What she didn't have was anyone on the inside willing to document it in real time. When I called her the first time, she was cautious, professional. She asked how I'd found her name, and I told her it was in Walter's files, buried in a correspondence thread from 16 months ago. She went quiet for a moment and then said, "He told me he was working on something," then he stopped responding. I told her Walter wasn't sick. I told her what had actually happened. We started meeting every 2 weeks after that. Always off-site, always in person. No emails, no texts about case details. Sandra explained early on that a frontal approach wouldn't work. Caldwell had a legal team that had been running interference for years. Any direct accusation without airtight documentation would get buried in motions and counterfilings for 3 years before anything happened. What we needed was the executives on record, either incriminating themselves or demonstrating coordinated obstruction. That's what the presentation was designed to produce. I want to be clear about something. The presentation I gave that morning was not my full case. It was a structured provocation. I showed them enough to make them angry, enough to make them feel cornered, and then I waited to see how they'd respond. The slide I held back, the one containing the offshore payment records and the direct links between executive bonuses and falsified quality metrics that stayed on my laptop. The goal was never to convince them. The goal was to get them to react. They reacted exactly the way we expected. About 6 weeks into my investigation, Phil Warwick had called me into his office for what he described as an informal check-in. Warwick is the CFO, quiet, methodical. The kind of man who processes everything through a filter of risk management before he opens his mouth. He sat across from me and spoke slowly, like he was choosing every word while simultaneously calculating its legal exposure. He said he understood I'd had some personal experience with industrial accidents. He said he knew about Beaumont. He said he knew about Ray. Then he leaned back and said, "You of all people understand that accidents are part of this industry. They always have been. The question is never whether something can go wrong. The question is how you manage the narrative when it does." He let that sit there between us for a moment. "Caldwell has always taken care of the people in its orbit," he said. "That includes people who understand how things actually work." I nodded. I told him I appreciated the perspective. I told him I'd think about it. I had a recorder running in my jacket pocket the entire time. The conversation was 8 minutes and 40 seconds long. I sent the audio file to Sandra that evening with a single line of context. He used Ray by name. Sandra called me back within the hour. She said that conversation, specifically Warwick's framing of accident management as narrative control, moved the potential charges from negligence into willful concealment. It changed the shape of the case in ways that would matter later. I kept going back to that meeting in the weeks afterward, not because it rattled me, though it did, but because of what it confirmed. These weren't people who had made bad decisions under pressure and then tried to cover their tracks out of panic. They knew exactly what they were doing. They had a vocabulary for it. Warwick had used the word narrative like it was a technical term, which for him it probably was. Ray wasn't a tragedy to him. Ray was a data point in a management framework. That's when I stopped thinking of this as a professional dispute and started thinking of it as something that needed to end. The morning of the presentation, Pete caught me in the hallway outside the conference room. He looked worse than he had in the parking garage. Less sleep, more weight behind his eyes. "Sutton told the floor managers yesterday that your report is going to be formally disputed by the executive team," he said. He used the phrase performance issues. "People are already talking." I told Pete that was fine. He looked at me like I was missing something. "Walt, they're going to walk you out of this building today. I've seen it before. They did the same thing to Walter." "I know," I said. He stared at me. "Then why are you going in there?" I told him to watch the lobby around 3 p.m. and find a reason to be somewhere he could see it clearly. He didn't understand what I meant. I didn't explain. I went into the conference room, connected my laptop, and started talking about pressure variance tolerances on the Series 7 valve line. I got about 4 minutes in before all 9 of them stood up. When Sandra answered my call, I told her they did exactly what we thought they would. All of them on the system recording on record. She told me to give her 4 hours and stay in the building. I hung up and sat back in my chair. What none of them knew yet was that 20 minutes after walking out, Darren Foss had sent an internal email to the senior leadership group describing the walkout as a unified leadership response to a bad faith quality report. He used those exact words. He was proud of it. He wanted it documented. Phil Warwick replied with a thumbs up emoji. That email did not just confirm the walkout happened. It established coordination. It turned 9 individuals making a bad decision into a group that had planned and celebrated obstruction of a regulatory process. It moved the case to a different level entirely, and Foss had written it himself voluntarily within the same hour. Craig Sutton appeared in my office doorway about 40 minutes later. Sutton sat down in my chair like he owned it. He didn't knock. He just walked in, settled in, and looked at me the way attorneys look at people they've already beaten in their heads before the conversation starts. "Your position has been terminated," he said, "effective immediately. Security will be here in 20 minutes. Any materials you've gathered on company time are Caldwell property and stay on site. That includes notes, copies, external drives, anything you printed." He paused to let that land. "I'd also remind you that you signed a confidentiality agreement on your first day. Broad scope. Anything discussed in internal meetings, any proprietary process information, any client data. Violations carry significant personal liability." I looked at him for a moment, then I said, "I appreciate the clarity." Something about how I said it made him stop. Attorneys develop a sensitivity to tone after enough years. He was reading mine and not finding what he expected. "This isn't a negotiation, Walt. You've made enemies of people who have long memories and influence across this entire sector. I've seen it go badly for people who thought they were in a stronger position than they actually were. Is that a threat?" I asked. "It's context," he said. "Principles are a fine thing, but they don't pay well when you're blacklisted." He stood up, smoothed his jacket, and moved toward the door. Then he stopped with his hand on the frame. "I actually argued for giving you more time to adjust to how we operate here," he said. "For what it's worth. It's worth something." I said, "Thank you, Craig." He left. I waited until I heard his footsteps clear the hallway. Then I opened my desk drawer and took out the small recording device that had been running in there for 10 weeks. Every conversation in that office, every informal check-in, every veiled suggestion, every moment someone had come in to apply pressure and frame it as friendly advice. I put the device in my jacket pocket. Then I picked up my personal items, just enough to look compliant, and walked out. Pete was near the elevator bay when I came through. He'd been pretending to review something on his tablet, but he wasn't looking at it. He fell into step beside me for a few seconds. "Sutton just told the floor that you resigned under performance review," he said quietly. "I know, Walt." He stopped walking. I turned around. He looked like a man who had been carrying something heavy for a long time and was deciding whether to finally put it down. I sent Sandra the email chain from last October, the one about the Series 4 suppressed incident report. I've had it copied on a personal drive for 8 months. I didn't know what to do with it. I nodded. "That was the right call, Pete. My kids are 9, 12, and 15, he said. "I keep thinking about what I'd tell them if they asked me what I did." I told him he'd have something true to say now. Then the elevator opened and I got in. The lobby was busy with the normal mid-afternoon traffic when Sandra walked through the front doors with 4 federal agents behind her. She didn't move fast. She didn't need to. She walked to the security desk at a pace that said she'd done this before and it had always gone the same way, and showed her credentials, and stated clearly that they had warrants to access specific company records and conduct formal interviews with named individuals. I was standing near the reception area. I watched the security guard reach for his phone. I watched the receptionist's face change. Within 3 minutes, someone from Caldwell's legal department was in the lobby, demanding to see documentation. Sandra handed it over without breaking her sentence. Foss came down 8 minutes later. He was already red-faced, already talking at a junior attorney who had the expression of someone recalculating his career trajectory in real time. When Foss saw me standing there, he crossed the lobby like he had something to say that couldn't wait. "You have no idea what you've set in motion," he said. His voice was low, controlled, the voice of a man who has handled problems before and believes he can handle this one. "I filed mandatory regulatory reports," I said. "That's all." He stared at me. I could see him working through it. He'd been focused on leaks, on press exposure, on competitors. The possibility that I hadn't gone outside at all, that I'd simply used the reporting channels his company had been circumventing for years. Channels that existed precisely because situations like this one were supposed to be reported, hadn't fully registered until right now. "You signed a confidentiality agreement," he said. "Mandatory regulatory reporting is explicitly exempt from confidentiality provisions under federal statute," I said. "Your legal team knows that. They drafted the agreement." The color shifted in his face. Before he could respond, Sandra stepped in beside me. She told Foss that I'd be remaining on site to assist the investigation and was not available for exit processing. Foss looked at her badge, then at me, then back at her. He didn't say anything else. The next 4 hours moved like a controlled demolition in slow motion. Agents secured servers on 3 floors. Executives were separated and walked to individual conference rooms for formal interviews. Department heads stood in clusters in hallways and talked in voices too low to carry. People were doing the math on what they knew and what that meant for them personally, and most of them weren't arriving at comfortable answers. At 4:30, Phil Warwick was escorted from his office by 2 agents. He walked through the main floor without looking up. He passed within 10 feet of where I was sitting in a side conference room with Sandra, and he did not look at me once. My phone rang at 47 number. I didn't recognize. Walt. The voice was older, careful, like someone who had rehearsed the call and then decided to just say it plainly. This is Walter Briggs. I hadn't spoken to him directly through any of this. Everything had gone through Sandra, through intermediaries, through the file system he'd built and maintained alone for 14 months in a retirement he hadn't chosen and hadn't wanted. The timer ran, I said. I know I let it. A pause, not awkward. Just the pause of a man choosing his next words carefully because he'd been waiting a long time to say them. I reset that thing every 45 days for over a year, sitting in my apartment in Austin, setting a calendar reminder, logging in, resetting, telling myself I was waiting for the right moment, telling myself I'd know when it came. What changed, I asked. I stopped believing the right moment was going to arrive on its own, he said. So I just let it go. I told him it worked. I told him where we were, what had happened that afternoon, what was coming tomorrow. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, good, then it was worth it. His voice didn't break, it just settled, like a man setting down something he'd been carrying for a long time. We talked for another 4 minutes before he hung up. He said to call him after the board meeting. He wanted to hear how it ended. The emergency board meeting was called for 8 a.m. the next morning. Edmund Hale, the board chair, ran it. He was 67 years old and had the composure of someone who had sat through enough crises to know that composure was the only thing that kept them from becoming catastrophes. He introduced me to the full 12-person board as their former QA director, and noted with precise deliberateness that the termination paperwork filed the previous afternoon had not received board approval. He said it once and didn't repeat it. I presented for 40 minutes. The same core data I'd shown the day before, the pressure variance records, the falsified test certifications, the 2 suppressed refinery incident reports. Then Walter's files, which the board had not seen and which 3 of its members had known existed and had chosen not to pursue. Then the financial records showing offshore payment patterns following regulatory inspections. Then Warwick's email describing the walkout as a unified leadership response sent 20 minutes after the fact with a thumbs-up reply from Warwick himself. Then the audio from my office recorder, Sutton's termination speech. Warwick's conversation about Ray, about narrative management, about Caldwell taking care of people who understood how things actually worked. The room was quiet in a way that rooms only get when people are recalculating. One of the board members, a woman named Patricia Oakes, who had joined the board 2 years ago from outside the industry, asked me directly how long I had been coordinating with the regulatory task force. I told her from the end of my 3rd week at Caldwell. She nodded slowly. She didn't look surprised. She looked like someone who had suspected something was wrong for a long time and had just been handed the documentation to confirm it. Foss tried to speak twice. Hale stopped him both times with a raised hand and no explanation. By the time I finished, the attorneys in the room were no longer advising their clients. They were advising themselves by noon. Trading of Caldwell stock was suspended pending regulatory review. By 2 p.m., 7 executives had been placed on administrative leave pending the federal investigation. By 4 p.m., the U.S. Attorney's Office announced preliminary charges against 6 individuals, with more expected as the document review continued. I submitted my resignation to Edmund Hale the following morning. He asked me to reconsider. He said the company needed people who understood what had gone wrong and could rebuild the right way. I told him I appreciated that and I meant it. But my work at Caldwell was finished. The thing I'd come there to do was done. He shook my hand at the door and said, "I'm sorry we didn't listen sooner." I told him the important thing was that the right people were listening now. A week later, I got a call from the Texas A&M Engineering Safety Institute. They were building an independent certification program for industrial pressure equipment, specifically for the oil and gas sector. They wanted someone who understood both the technical side and what happens when the oversight process gets corrupted from the inside. Someone who had seen it up close. I said yes before they finished the sentence. Here's what I keep coming back to. Foss thought he was demonstrating power when he walked out of that room. He thought 9 executives moving in unison sent a message that I was outnumbered, outranked, and should understand that clearly. He thought the unified front made them invincible. What he actually did was hand me the last piece of evidence I needed. The moment they moved together, they stopped being individual managers making individual bad decisions and became a coordinated group that had seen the documentation and chosen, on record, to reject it. That distinction mattered enormously in the charges that followed. Foss wrote the email himself. Warwick replied, "Nobody made them do it. Their own arrogance closed the case." If you've ever sat in a room like that one, where you had the facts and they had the titles, and you watched the titles win anyway, then you already understand what this story is actually about. It's not about one company or one investigation. It's about the decision to keep going when the easier thing would be to take the settlement and move on. The title doesn't beat the evidence. It never has. The question is whether you're patient enough and methodical enough to collect what you need before you move. Because when the moment comes, and it does come, the only thing standing between accountability and another cover-up is whether someone did the work. I did the work. So did Walter Briggs, alone in an apartment in Austin, resetting a 45-day timer for 14 months, waiting for someone to pick up where he left off. Don't let someone else's silence be the reason the truth never gets out.